So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a surgeon, and I've been in the Valley for about 32 years. I'm a board certified in general surgery and also part of the general surgery trauma vascular team at St. Joseph's Hospital. We've been here for about 32 years in the Valley. I'm one of the founders and the chairman of the Arizona Cultural Academy Board. We incorporated in 1996, and I've had a reasonable experience with other boards. I was on the board, I was the chairman of the ICC, which is Islamic Cultural Center in the late 1980s, and we established the ICCP, which is Islamic Community Center of Phoenix in 1985. So I've seen quite a few boards and organizations, and some of it, good experience, some of it upheaval and controversy. But alhamdulillah, we have a very blessed group at ACA that we've been together for a long time, and we alhamdulillah succeeded in establishing a 300 student Islamic school. So the serious business aside, I have a joke to start with you, so you can all have a little laugh after this beautiful dinner that we had. And this joke, basically, I was told this joke by my wife one day. She said, "Well, when I hear a joke," I said, "Yes." So she said, "Okay, there's this couple that are well-to-do. They have money and they have good charity. They're good practicing Muslims." So the wife says to the husband, "You know so-and-so, after his wife died, he built a masjid for his wife. And he put the masjid in her name, mashallah. He said, honey, I have a land for the last 10 years, but the ball now is in your court." So I hope it's a good joke to start with. So why are we here today? So this is the next topic is board member responsibility. So what are the responsibilities of a board member or the board of directors of non-profit organization? There are responsibilities for the board as a whole, and there are responsibility for each individual person on the board. Now, it is very common to find in bylaws a phrase that says the board of directors or the board of trustees is the governing body of the organization. You find that almost in every bylaw of non-profit organization. Even for profit organizations, they have the same thing, that it's the governing body. So what does governing body mean? It implies three things: authority, responsibility, and accountability. In Islamic organization, many people get on the board not knowing the three elements, and everybody have a personal imagination or concept as what is on the board. Some they think it's a prestige, some they think they take it too seriously, and they say responsibility but no authority. But these three go hand in hand: the authority, responsibility, and accountability. And we'll also touch upon what is an individual person responsibility. So as a board, first the authority. We know that the board should have an authority from Islamic. Islam tells us to organize and to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and the leaders among you. So it says, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنكُمْ. So we know that the authority is in the Islamic spirit. So the board will have the authority and requires obedience from the members. Then the responsibility. In Islam, every responsibility is taken very seriously. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Each one of you is a shepherd, and each shepherd is so responsible for his flocks. So if you step up and say, I'm going to be a board member, it is not a joke anymore. Now you have a big, huge burden on your neck that you have to fulfill for the community. And the other one is the accountability, is that not only you are responsible for the organization, but you also are accountable to the membership. You're accountable to the IRS, you're accountable to the government, you're accountable to the state, you're accountable to the police, and you're accountable to the membership, to the people that you claim that you are serving. So these are the three elements of governance. So depends on how do you view the leadership. Some people think it's a bonanza. It's a place where me and my family members can do this. I can hire my nephew, or I can do this. So everybody has different concept of what leadership. But in Islam, it's not a bonanza, it's responsibility. And it's not tashrif, it's not an honor, it's taklif. It is an obligation. And that's how the Sahaba and all the Khulafa Rashidin took it. This is not I'm Amir al-Mu'mineen, so what? I'm a servant of the people, that's the spirit. So the board has legal and ethical roles. Responsible for the vision and mission, governance, strategic planning, and evaluating the performance, organizational image, legal liability, ethical integrity and accountability, and self-management. These are, and in your handout, this is explained very well. So let's start with we finished. Okay, sorry about that. So vision and mission. Without vision, there's no organization. There has to be somebody who has the vision as to, this is a project, building a masjid, starting a school, starting a charity organization to help the poor, to feed the hungry, to do medical. So there's a project. Should be a vision for the people who are establishing this project. And then there should be a mission, that what is our mission? What is the scope of our work? We're going to open a hospital. Okay, so that's the mission. It has to be established by the board. And the board should be the one to have the most accurate and updated vision. And they express that in the bylaws. Then there's a governance. The board is a governing body that has legislative, executive, and judiciary and fiduciary responsibilities. So the legislative, the board is responsible by the bylaws and the procedures. So all the procedures and the bylaws for the organization must be approved by the board. And in most organizations, it's also given to the assembly to ratify it. So after the board writes up the bylaw, they hold a meeting and the assembly should ratify it. Now, the board is also legislative in a way that they also explain the bylaw. So if there's an argument over what does this phrase in the bylaw mean, it goes to the board. So the board will have the right to interpret the bylaw. Executive, they hire the chief executives, they have the oversight of the executives. Judiciary, there will be arbitration. Some people will be fighting, some people, trying. So there's a conflict resolution eventually have to rest on the board. Fiduciary, many boards, especially non-profit, they'll be philanthropists financing the organization. It's a charity for the board members. But also, beside finding funds and fundraising, also running the budget. So there's a budget responsibility for the board that they cannot avoid. And it's a big headache, believe me. To keep the organization afloat is a big headache, and that's the headache of the board. Strategic planning, what is strategic planning? Is an organizational management activity that is issued to set priorities and focus energy and resources. So who's responsible for the advancement of the organization? It's not the member, it's the board. The board has to have the strategic planning. We have $1,000, we have a building, we have 25 members, how are we going to position that? Who's going to do what? So all that strategic planning is set priority. What is the priority of our organization? Is it to take care of a sick person? Are we going to treat cancer patients? Are we going to treat non-cancer patients? Are we going to open a masjid? Are we going to have a luxurious masjid? Are we going to have a small masjid? We have, $20,000 budget a year. Where are we going to prioritize these expenses? So priorities, that strategic planning is the board's responsibility. The next one, evaluating performance. If the masjid has an imam, if the organization is a health care, there's a clinic, so you're hiring people, you have to be supervising and oversighting these people to find out what is the performance of this organization. That's the board. Somebody comes and say, this organization is not doing what it's supposed to do. Where do they go? They go to the board. The board has to come and examine what's going on and have first-hand information as what actually is going on in the organization. The next one is the image. Needless to say that the board holds the biggest image of the organization. Never mind that everybody comes here for salah and they're good and they're Muslim, they pray on time and so forth. But if, for la samahullah, one of the board members have a drinking habit or has some shady reputation in finances or has borrowed money from somebody. So it's very important that the image, number one image of the organization comes from the board. So the board should be a good standing in the community. They should project proper image. They should be leading by example, and they should avoid improper behavior and avoid conceived improper behavior. So not only do they have to be good, they also need unfortunately, they need to demonstrate to the community that they're good. It's not that, I'm good, I don't eat mal haram, I don't, speak ill of other people. But if I keep that to myself, the people don't know that. So you're in a position that you have to have good reputation, so the organization will have good reputation. So if there's a question that you're using anything for your own interest, you're serving yourself by being on the board, you have to dispel that message. You cannot allow people to think, well, he's using the board for his advantage. So you have to avoid any behavior or any circumstances that conceivably be interpreted that you are benefiting from the board. Look at the example of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. When people tell him, why don't you name your son as a Khalifa? He said, "Thakalatka ummuk." He said, you're such a bad person. Why would you suggest such a terrible mistake? There's enough burden that Umar carried all the sins of the ummah. Why do you want my son to become? So somebody like Umar will never have conceived or imagined conflict of interest. So this is the kind of thing that we have to keep. No conflict of interest, conceived or real. That's very important for the board. Legal liability. So it depends on how much assets you have. If the more assets you have, the more people want to sue you. The bigger money you have, the more the IRS will be interested in your finances. And any harm you can cause an individual in the community, be magnified. So the board will be held accountable for everything that goes on in the organization. And so that really calls for humility. In order to avoid lawsuits and people, attacking the organization, putting energy into trying to bring the organization down, you have to be very humble. Somebody comes and starts cussing out the board, you don't fight them back. You don't fight them physically. If they curse, you don't curse them back. So you have to treat everybody with humility to avoid huge problems and legal liability. And every Muslim organization should have liability insurance. You cannot go without liability insurance. It's really a big problem because I've known some organizations brought down by lawsuit because they didn't have enough funds to defend themselves. So it's very important to have that. Ethical integrity, you have to file the IRS Form 990 every year, 99 for the state of Arizona. These are forms, believe me, they look at you with a microscope. The Form 990 is about 20 pages. They ask you every question that ever happened, imaginable. Are you ethical or not? Is this board, they want to know the salaries of the board of directors. They want to know if the board of trustees, they should do it for free. They want to know if do you charge anything. So they go over the organization with a fine-tooth comb. So you have to answer all these questions. And God forbid you try to not state the truth in that form. Every year you have to file that form. And they want to know, the IRS wants to know whether you're true to your stated mission. What's your mission? What are you doing? What have you accomplished? And ethically also, you have to ensure there's no conflict of interest. You don't hire your relatives. You don't build a non-profit organization so you can hire your son or your grandson or your cousin. You have to choose the best person for the job. Normally the board is volunteers, so there's no financial reward for the board. And I think Sister Suzanne is going to talk about, as a board of non-profit organizations, what can you get out of the organization? What perks can you have? Can you even charge a dinner on the organization, or you have to pay for your own dinner? I mean, these are things that are very important. And they have to make sure there's no corruption in the organization. So you have to be on the alert that nobody's cheating, nobody's stealing, even if anybody who steals within the organization, the board is responsible. Finally, self-management. The board has a duty to police itself. You have to recruit proper members. You have to do elections or select. You have to have a written process how you select or elect or choose board members. And you have to be policing, as I said, and look at individual performance. Every individual on the board should evaluate themselves. Am I just here as a number on the board, or am I really offering something to the board? So there'll be self-evaluation for each board member. I evaluate myself that I can improve here, here, here. And I promise to improve. Otherwise, don't just occupy the seat. Let somebody else come and serve. Training and self-improvement, conflict of interest. So always on the lookout. Any board member having conflict of interest has to be taken care of. But you also have to maintain the unity, because without chemistry, without love, without tolerance and forgiveness, the board will fall apart, believe me, within a couple of 3 meetings. 3 or 4 issues, they will fall apart. And you have to have a way how to dismiss a board member. They have to be written in bylaws. How do you dismiss a bad board member? You have to have that mechanism. So, responsibility for the individual board member. You have to be passionate. If you're not passionate about the cause, if you don't really love the mission of the organization, you don't belong in it. So you have to be passionate, you have to have enthusiasm, otherwise don't occupy that seat. You have to give full support of the mission and vision. You have to accept and support the board decisions. That's an important. When the board decides something, you stick with it. Let alone that you had a different opinion. Your different opinion will be expressed during the meeting of the board. But once the meeting is over, you come out to the public. The board has one voice. Okay? So you don't say, well, the board decided this, but I really don't believe in it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not divide. Yes, you have to give nasiha. Yes, you have to stand up for corruption. If you see corruption in the board, you have to stand up. But however, at the end, you speak with the board with one voice. You have to separate the interest of the organization from specific needs of your needs and your company. Let's say you have a company, you have a building company. Oh, I get my company to build the masjid. You can't do that. Or I have an empty business, I can, do something with it. So you have to be totally devoid of conflict of interest. And you have to keep all the deliberation of the board confidential. So in the board, there's minutes of the meeting, which will be made public, and there are deliberations that you don't have to document. How do you reach the decision? Sometimes you speak ill of somebody. In order to prove something, you may backbite somebody for the business of the organization. You don't write that in the minutes. So you have to keep things confidential. You don't leak what happened in the board to your wife or your friend or your brother. The board matters are confidential. They're not to be shared by family members. Only the written minutes that are published, these can be given to the public. And then your family can know about it. Authority is vested in the board as a whole, not in each individual. Just you, as a board member, you don't speak in the name of the board. You don't say, I'm a board member, therefore the chief executive or the imam must respect me as a board. No. You're nothing without the board as a whole. I mean, you are something, alhamdulillah, you're doing great for the service with akhihi. However, you don't say, the chief executive doesn't have to bow to every board member separately. That's not the spirit of the board. So bring issues to the board and refrain from responding to situations. A fire takes place. You say, I'm not going to, I leave that to the board, how they're going to handle it. Of course, you have to have an emergency plan. Present the organization appropriately and support the staff leadership and fulfill the fiduciary responsibility of the organization. Attend meeting regularly and be well prepared and participate in all matters. So the 10 hallmarks of effective board. What is an effective board? To have clarity, to set measures and reach goals, to focus time and attention on priorities, to conspicuously work on the process of developing a good governance culture. You have to have the right culture in the board, not corruption. And mutually respectful partnership with the chief executive. So who's the chief executive? Is it imam? Is it his principal? Is it chief of the hospital? You be very respectful. And you do more governance and less management. Huge difference between management and governance. Management is how you're going to do things. Governance is guideline. So micromanagement is one of the disasters that boards all over the world do. Is that they want to know everything, how everything happened. Although they have an executive, they have an employee, but they tell the employee, how are you going to do that? Which font are you going to write on the, you have to hire somebody who has professionalism and ability, and then don't micromanage them. And honest communications with the executives, and systematic evaluation. If you evaluate your employee, you have to use a rubric. How do you evaluate them? Oh, he's good, he's not good, he's not. No, you have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what we look for in the organization. And the board can only act as a whole body, not as individuals. How do you deal with the chief executive? Respect. You have a principal, you have an imam, treat them with respect. And you have to build trust. Don't give them any surprises. You're going to decide to fire them or hire them, or don't surprise them. Just discuss things ahead of time. Be honest, be open with them. And praise the chief executive publicly and criticize them privately. Same thing for board members. You're a board member, you have another board member has a problem, you speak to him privately. You don't go, to CNN. Open and honest communication, professional and cordial relationship. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.